The galaxy was full of mysteries, but the Ketheri believed there was nothing they could not study. They were a proud race of scholars, explorers, and archivists. For centuries, they had traveled across star systems, recording every species, every relic, and every war machine they could find. Knowledge, to them, was the highest treasure. When the long-range sensors of the Kethari Council picked up a massive object drifting on the edge of an abandoned sector, the scholars grew excited. The readings showed a human warship, silent and unmoving as if lost in time. The humans were a young species in the eyes of the galaxy, known for their strange behavior, quick tempers, and bold actions. Many alien civilizations dismissed them as reckless. To the Kethari, that made humans perfect for study. The council debated quickly and agreed that a research mission must be sent at once. Their goal was simple: board the warship, study its technology, and add another entry to the endless archives of Kethari knowledge. They did not fear danger. To them, the ship was nothing but a broken tool of a species still crawling up the galactic ladder. The research vessel Vayari was dispatched, carrying 12 Kethari scholars and their assistants. They were not soldiers but scientists trained to move carefully and record everything. As their vessel approached the drifting giant, they marveled at its size. The human warship was longer than 10 city towers stacked together. Its surface was scarred with black marks, as though it had fought countless battles before finally falling into silence. From their windows, the Ketheri studied the warship's design. It was brutal, angular, and without elegance. Unlike the smooth silver curves of Ketheri ships, the human vessel looked like a weapon first and a home second. Its hull bristled with cannons and missile tubes, many of them broken or melted. To the scholars, it was an image of crude engineering. Yet at the same time, it had an intimidating presence, like a beast that could still bear its fangs even in death. "Remarkable," said Mara, the lead scholar, as she gazed at the ship. "Humans build without grace but with purpose. This is not art. This is survival forged into metal." Her assistant, Rin, adjusted his visor and added, "It must be abandoned for decades. The systems are cold and the life signs are zero. The humans left it behind like a shell after the creature is gone." The others nodded. They did not question her decision when Mara ordered the docking maneuver. The Vayari extended mechanical arms that latched onto a breach in the warship's hull. The boarding tunnel hissed as it locked into place, and the first team of scholars stepped onto the human vessel. Inside, the air was stale and thin. Emergency lights flickered weakly, glowing red against the walls. Dust floated in the corridors, disturbed only by their footsteps. The halls stretched endlessly, built for a crew far larger than what the Kethari could imagine. They moved carefully, recording every detail with their scanners. "This ship is a relic of a lost age," Mara whispered as her eyes scanned human writing etched into the walls. Strange symbols, old banners, and fragments of messages still clung to the metal. "Each mark tells us what kind of people they were." The Kethari were fascinated. They found abandoned mess halls with overturned tables, engine rooms with scorched panels, and broken drones left in storage bays. The ship felt like a tomb, but one that held stories waiting to be told. Still, some of the younger assistants felt uneasy. The silence was heavy, almost watchful. One of them, a quiet scholar named Jor, stopped in a corridor and pressed his hand against the wall. "Does anyone else feel it?" he asked softly. "This ship is not like the others we have studied." "It feels alive," Rin laughed lightly. "Alive, it is an empty shell. Do not let the silence trick your thoughts. Humans build with noise and aggression. What you feel is only the echo of their presence." But Jor did not reply. He kept glancing down the long corridors as though expecting something to move in the shadows. The team pressed on, deeper into the heart of the warship. Their scanners detected faint energy readings, but the signals were weak, like embers at the bottom of a fire long extinguished. The scholars took this as a sign of decaying systems, not realizing what those embers truly meant. Back on the Vayari, the ship's commander monitored the progress of the team. He noted the strange readings, but he trusted the scholars' judgment. After all, what threat could a silent, empty warship pose? For the Kethari, this was nothing more than another entry in their endless pursuit of knowledge. They did not see danger. They saw only curiosity. They believed the humans had left behind a relic of the past, something safe to study. Yet, as the last of the boarding team stepped into the deeper chambers of the warship, the silent giant stirred. A pulse of energy rippled through its ancient circuits. Lights blinked faintly in hidden corners unseen by the Cathari. The warship was not dead. It was waiting. The Cathari scholars advanced carefully through the dark corridors of the human warship. Their boots echoed against the metal floor, a hollow sound that carried far into the distance. Every step reminded them of how large this vessel truly was. The ship seemed endless, as if built to house an entire city rather than a single crew. Mara, the leader of the expedition, walked at the front, her visor glowing faintly as it recorded every surface. She kept her voice steady, but inside she felt a growing sense of awe. The more she studied the warship, the more she realized it was unlike anything the Cathari had ever seen. It had no decoration, no soft lines, no attempt at beauty. Every wall, every bolt, every weapon mount served a purpose. The humans had designed this vessel for one reason alone: war. Behind her, Rin carried the scanning equipment, his eyes moving quickly from one reading to another. "Strange," he said, his voice breaking the silence. "The ship is dead, yet the structure is still strong. The metal is denser than anything I have seen. Even after so many years, it resists decay." Jor, the younger scholar who had felt uneasy before, followed near the rear. His gaze wandered constantly, searching every shadow. "It is too quiet," he whispered. "Even for an empty ship, the silence feels heavy." The team moved into a wide chamber, once a gathering hall for the crew. The long tables were overturned, chairs scattered, and broken plates still lay across the floor. A banner, tattered and faded, hung from the far wall. The scholars gathered around it, their scanners humming. The banner showed a strange design, a circle of blue with stars and a figure of a human raising a weapon. "What does it mean?" one assistant asked. Mara touched the fabric gently. "It is a symbol of pride. Humans often create images to inspire one another. This one tells their crew to stand together, to fight even when surrounded by darkness." The scholars noted everything, filling their data pads with scans and images. To them, this was history, a glimpse into a species they considered young and reckless. None of them thought of danger. None of them imagined that the ship could be more than a lifeless relic. As they continued deeper, they passed through narrow corridors lined with doors. Some rooms were sealed shut, others open. Inside, they found sleeping quarters with bunks, lockers filled with rusted uniforms and personal objects left behind. A small photo frame caught Mara's attention. She lifted it carefully and wiped the dust from its surface. It showed a human family, 2 adults with a child standing between them, smiling. Rin leaned closer. Strange creatures. Even their soldiers kept reminders of home. "Not strange," Mara replied softly. "It means they fought for something greater than themselves. It means they remembered who they were." Her words lingered in the air as they placed the frame back on the bunk. The deeper they went, the more the warship revealed its scars. Walls were burned black from energy blasts. Sections of the floor were torn open by explosions. Some areas were sealed with heavy bulkheads, as if the crew had tried to contain damage or invaders. The scholars documented it all with excitement. Each wound in the ship's body told them another piece of the story. Finally, they reached the central corridor leading toward the ship's command bridge. The door was massive, reinforced with layers of metal, still locked tightly despite centuries of silence. Mara placed her hand on the cold surface and smiled faintly. "This is the heart. If we can open it, we will learn how humans commanded their battles." The team began working. Rin connected his scanner to the panel beside the door, running lines of code to override the ancient locks. Sparks flew and the panel flickered. The system resisted, but it was only a matter of time. The Cathari were patient. As they waited, Jor stood at the edge of the group, staring down the corridor behind them. His unease had only grown stronger. He felt the ship watching them as though hidden eyes followed their every step. "We should not stay too long," he said at last. "This place feels wrong." Mara gave him a calm glance. "Fear will cloud your mind. Remember why we are here. Knowledge is greater than fear." Her words silenced him, but they did not ease the tightness in his chest. With a final surge of energy, the door lock released. A deep metallic groan filled the corridor as the massive doors slid open, revealing the bridge of the warship. The scholars entered slowly, their lights spreading across the chamber. Rows of consoles stood in silence. Chairs were empty, yet arranged as if waiting for their crew to return. At the center stood the captain's seat, worn but firm, facing a wide window that showed the stars beyond. Mara stepped forward, her breath caught in her throat. "Magnificent," she whispered. "This is where they commanded. From this place they faced their enemies. Imagine the battles that were fought with voices shouting across this room." Rin placed his scanner on one of the consoles. To his surprise, faint power readings appeared. "The systems are not fully dead," he reported. "Something here still holds energy." The others gathered around, curiosity burning brighter than caution. They had come seeking knowledge, and now they stood at the edge of unlocking secrets no other species had ever touched. What none of them knew was that their presence had already begun to stir the warship's heart. Deep within its core, old circuits glowed faintly. A machine voice whispered through the network, waking after years of slumber. The silent giant was no longer silent. It was listening. The bridge of the warship was larger than any chamber the Cathari had entered so far. The wide windows looked out into the endless stars, and for a moment the scholars felt as if they stood at the center of the galaxy itself. Dust coated the consoles and the chairs were stiff with age, but the room carried a strange weight. It was not empty. It felt as though voices still lingered in the air, echoing from a time when humans had commanded from this very place. Mara moved slowly toward the captain's chair. Her gloved hand traced the surface, and she imagined a human officer sitting there, giving orders while fire and destruction raged outside. She felt both admiration and unease. "Here," she said softly. "This is where decisions of life and death were made." Rin was already busy at the nearest console, his fingers running across the ancient surface as he tried to force it awake. His scanner beeped faintly, showing signs of dormant power. "Strange," he muttered. "This system should be dead, and yet something stirs inside it." The others gathered around, curiosity stronger than caution. The panel flickered, a dull glow running through its lines. Dust shook free from the cracks as the console hummed faintly. Then, without warning, a surge of energy passed through the bridge. Lights along the wall snapped on, glowing red and gold. The floor trembled under their feet. The Cathari froze. Their hearts raced, but their training kept them calm. Mara raised her voice, steady but alert. "Do not panic. It is only a machine. We control the system now. Record everything." Yet even as she spoke, the lights spread further. One by one, consoles across the bridge awakened, screens flashing with human symbols. The main window darkened as data scrolled across it, glowing with strange words none of them understood. Then a sound filled the chamber. It was deep and mechanical, yet it carried something more, a rhythm almost like breath. The voice spoke in human language, old and rough, echoing through the speakers. The scholars could not understand the words, but the tone carried power. It was a greeting, a challenge, and a warning all at once. The Cathari looked at one another in silence. Jor, standing at the back, felt his chest tighten. "It knows we are here," he whispered. Rin shook his head. "Impossible. It is only a program repeating old signals. Do not let fear guide your thoughts." But even Rin could not hide the way his hands trembled as more systems came alive. The warship shuddered as though shaking off a long sleep. Far outside, in the dark of space, massive turrets rotated slowly, their movements smooth despite centuries of silence. Panels along the hull glowed faintly, outlining the shape of the giant ship in the starlight. On the bridge, one of the consoles projected a holographic image. It showed a human figure in uniform, standing tall with a stern expression. The figure's mouth moved, speaking words none of the Cathari could translate. The hologram flickered, then shifted into recordings. The scholars watched in silence as scenes of battle played before them. Human fleets clashing against towering enemy vessels. Soldiers shouting orders, firing weapons, and charging forward despite overwhelming odds. Explosions shook the stars, but the humans fought without hesitation. Mara's voice was quiet as she recorded every image. "This is no ordinary ship," she said. "It carries the memory of its battles. It carries the voices of its people." The others were less calm. Some stepped back, unsettled by the raw fury of the images. Jor gripped his scanner tightly, his eyes wide. "This ship is not just remembering, it is showing us who they were." As if answering his words, the holograms grew stronger. The scholars saw humans boarding enemy ships, outnumbered but unbroken. They saw soldiers singing together in dark halls before charging into fire. They saw captains standing tall at the edge of defeat, refusing to surrender. The Cathari had studied many species, but never had they seen such will. Humans were reckless, yes, but they were also relentless. Even when hope was gone, they fought. Suddenly, the holograms vanished. The room went dark for a moment. Then a single red light glowed above the captain's chair. The deep voice returned, this time sharper, heavier. The scholars could not translate the words, but the meaning was clear. The ship was not speaking to itself. It was speaking to them. Mara's hands shook slightly, though she tried to keep her face calm. This ship, it recognizes us. It is aware. Rin swallowed hard, his voice low. Machines do not think like this. This is no ordinary program. The bridge trembled again as more systems powered up. Doors along the corridors slammed shut with metallic echoes. Emergency lights flashed across the halls. Somewhere deep in the vessel, machines began to stir. Drones, weapons, defenses that had not seen use in years. The warship had awakened fully now. It was no longer a silent relic. It was alive, and it was watching the intruders on its bridge. Jor's voice broke the silence. We should leave now, but it was already too late. The ship had chosen to wake, and the Ketheri were caught inside its ancient heart. The bridge was no longer silent. The glowing screens filled the chamber with shifting lights, and the deep voice of the ship echoed across the walls. The Ketheri stood frozen, their eyes locked on the strange symbols flashing in front of them. Then the screens changed again. Instead of text, they showed images, scenes from the past recorded by the ship itself. At first, the Ketheri saw stars filled with human fleets. Sleek ships, smaller than the warship they now stood upon, moved in tight formations. They looked fragile compared to the massive enemy vessels that filled the other side of the screen. The scholars recognized those enemies, an ancient empire that had once ruled the galaxy. The Ketheri had studied their ruins, their old records, and had always wondered what had brought their downfall. Now the answer glared before them. The humans. The battle recordings showed humans fighting against impossible odds. Great enemy vessels fired beams that split through human shields, but the humans did not retreat. Instead, they pushed forward, surrounding their enemies with smaller ships and striking from every angle. They moved like hunters, refusing to let their prey escape. Mara leaned forward, her breath caught in her throat. They faced an empire greater than themselves, she whispered. And they did not turn away. Rin adjusted his scanner, recording every second. His voice was hushed. This is not only history, it is proof. Proof that humans fought against powers stronger than them and survived. More images followed. The scholars saw soldiers inside dark corridors, their armor scratched and their faces pale, but their eyes fierce with determination. They carried weapons close to their chests and advanced step by step, even as explosions shook the ground beneath them. Behind them, banners with human symbols waved in the smoke. Jor could not look away. Each scene pressed against his chest, making his heart pound faster. They never stop, he said quietly. No matter how much they lose, they keep moving forward. The ship showed them more. Human commanders shouted orders while alarms blared around them. Their crews worked with speed, repairing broken systems, firing weapons and holding their ground even as enemy fire tore through their hulls. The Ketheri could see fear in the humans' faces, but the fear never stopped them. It only sharpened their resolve. One recording showed a single human ship surrounded by dozens of enemy vessels. Its shields collapsed, its weapons broke, yet still it fought. It rammed into the heart of the enemy formation, breaking it apart with a final strike. The explosion lit the stars like a second sun. The Ketheri were silent as the scene faded. None of them had words for what they had witnessed. Their own people prized knowledge and caution, avoiding battles whenever possible. But humans had chosen the opposite path. They fought even when reason said it was hopeless. Mara's voice broke the silence. This is why they build ships like this. Not for elegance, not for display, but because they believe survival requires strength. Every bolt, every weapon, every line of this vessel carries that belief. Her assistants nodded slowly, their faces pale. The warship did not stop. More images appeared, showing humans singing together in their halls before a battle. Their voices echoed through the speakers of the bridge, strong and united. The words were unknown, but the feeling was clear. Hope, courage, and defiance. Then came a quieter scene. A human captain sat in the very chair where Mara now stood. His uniform was torn, his face lined with exhaustion. He spoke to his crew, his voice steady despite the fire burning outside the windows. The ship translated none of it, but the Ketheri could feel his determination. He was ready to fight until the very end. The image faded, leaving the bridge dark once more. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's systems alive again after so many years. Jor finally spoke. His voice was low, almost trembling. We thought them reckless. We thought them weak, but this is something else. Rin swallowed hard. It is not recklessness, it is will. They fight because surrender is not in their nature. Mara stood tall, though inside she felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her. This ship is not a relic. It is a warning. The humans left it here to remind us who they are. The words echoed in the minds of every scholar. The humans were not just another species to be studied. They were something the galaxy had not fully understood. Then, without warning, the ship's voice filled the bridge again. The deep tone rolled like thunder, sharper than before. This time, even without translation, the Ketheri felt the meaning in their bones. The ship was not simply showing them the past. It was judging them in the present. One by one, the doors of the bridge sealed shut. Lights along the walls glowed red. In the distance, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The warship had shared its story. Now it was preparing to act. The red glow deepened across the bridge, painting the walls in a harsh light. The Kethari scholars stood frozen as the ancient warship spoke again. Its voice rolled through the speakers, heavy and commanding. The words were in human language, but their meaning reached beyond translation. The ship was not speaking into the void. It was speaking directly to them. Mara clenched her hands together, forcing calm into her voice. Do not be afraid. It is only a program reacting to our presence. But the others were not convinced. Jor's breathing quickened and he stepped back toward the sealed door. It knows we are not human. It is aware. This is no program. It is alive. As if answering him, the consoles flared with new light. Strange symbols scrolled across the screens, sharp and fast before settling into one repeated message. The Kethari translation device struggled to decode it, producing only fragments. Identify intruders, loyalty, state your origin. The scholars exchanged nervous glances. Rin's hands trembled as he adjusted the scanner. It is demanding something. It is testing us. Mara steadied herself. Then we must respond. We are scholars, not enemies. If this ship still follows human commands, it may understand reason. She stepped forward and activated her translator. Her voice, calm and formal, echoed through the bridge. We are the Kethari. We come in peace. We are explorers and students of history. We mean no harm. The silence that followed was heavy, crushing. Then the ship answered, its voice lower than before. The words came sharp and cold, and though the translation device could not provide exact meaning, the message was clear enough. Not human, not loyal. Threat. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Distant metallic sounds echoed through the corridors, like the march of machines awakening after long sleep. Rin's scanner flashed. Movement detected. Automated drones, heading this way. Panic swept through the group. Assistants clutched their packs, their eyes wide with fear. Jor pressed himself against the wall, his voice breaking. I told you. We should have left the moment it stirred. Mara held her ground, though her heart raced. Stay calm. We are scientists. This ship has rules, commands written into it by humans. We must understand those rules. Her words steadied them only slightly, but before they could prepare further, the doors to the bridge opened with a thunderous clang. From the shadows stepped figures of metal, drones shaped like soldiers, tall and broad. Their bodies gleamed with old plating, scratched but unbroken. Their eyes glowed a steady red, and weapons extended from their arms. They moved with purpose, surrounding the scholars in silence. The Kethari froze where they stood. The drones did not attack, but their presence carried a warning. One wrong move would be the end. Then the ship's voice returned, louder now, filling the air with unyielding weight. Declare. Human or enemy. The translation device shook under the force of the words, repeating fragments again and again. Declare loyalty? Declare. Rin swallowed hard, his mind racing. It is demanding we choose. But how can we? We are not human. We cannot claim loyalty. Mara's thoughts burned with urgency. The warship was not like the vessels of other species. It did not accept strangers easily. It carried within it the will of its lost crew. To the humans, loyalty meant survival. And to the warship, anything not loyal was a danger. She raised her hands slowly, speaking into her translator. We are not enemies. We are seekers of truth. We respect the humans. We honor their memory. For a moment, the drones held still, Their eyes dimmed slightly as if considering her words, but then the ship spoke once more and its voice was filled with finality. Words are not proof. Loyalty is tested. Loyalty is earned. Without warning, the lights shifted again. The drones moved, herding the Ketheri away from the captain's chair and toward the far corridor. The sealed doors opened, revealing a long, dark passage leading deeper into the ship. Jor's voice cracked. "It is not letting us leave. It is taking us somewhere." The group had no choice but to obey. The drones guided them step by step, their weapons trained on the scholars. Fear hung heavy in the air, but so did a strange sense of awe. This was no ordinary relic. This was a living guardian of humanity's memory, and it had decided to test them. As they moved through the corridors, Mara whispered to herself, "This ship does not forget. It carries its crew's spirit, their demands, their strength. To study it was our goal. But now we are the ones being studied." Her words were true. The warship had awakened fully now. Its weapons were alive, its drones active, its voice steady. It would not allow intruders to come and go freely. By the time they reached the next chamber, the Ketheri understood what they faced. The humans had built more than metal and circuits. They had built judgment itself, sealed inside a warship that never truly died, and now, that judgment had turned its gaze on them. The long corridor stretched before the Ketheri, dark and metallic, with red lights flickering overhead. The drones walked silently beside them, their glowing eyes fixed on every movement. The scholars' hearts pounded, each step heavier than the last. The warship was alive now, and it did not intend to let them leave easily. Mara led the group, keeping her voice calm though her mind raced. "Stay close. Move carefully. Do not provoke it." Jor stumbled slightly, his hands shaking as he clutched his scanner. "Move carefully? We are trapped in a warship that could destroy us in seconds. How do you expect calm?" Rin adjusted the equipment on his back, trying to keep the scanners online. "We need to understand it. If we panic, we will make a mistake. And mistakes here are not forgiven." The drones guided them through long, winding corridors filled with battle scars. Burned floors, torn walls, and broken machinery surrounded them. The Ketheri took in every detail, documenting it as best they could, but fear made their hands shake. Every hum of a distant system, every flicker of a light made their imaginations run wild. Suddenly, a heavy metallic door slid open ahead, revealing a chamber larger than the bridge. In the center, massive turrets turned slowly, scanning the corridors as if waiting for intruders. Panels along the walls lit up with red warning lights. The hum of active machinery filled the air. "The defenses?" Rin whispered. "They are fully operational. We cannot fight this." Mara's eyes scanned the room. "Then we do not fight. We move carefully, avoid detection, and keep to the shadows." The group advanced slowly, hugging the walls. The drones walked beside them, watching, testing. At any moment, the ship could decide their fate. A sudden alarm blared, echoing through the corridors. The Ketheri froze as the turrets shifted toward them. Sparks flew from the walls as energy barriers rose. The ship had sensed hesitation and it responded. "Run!" Jor shouted, breaking the tense silence. Mara did not hesitate. She grabbed his arm and pulled him along as the group dashed through the corridor. The drones moved to intercept, but the scholars' speed and knowledge of the ship's layout gave them a small advantage. They turned sharply, ducking into a maintenance shaft. The narrow passage forced them to move in single file, and the scanners beeped furiously, detecting energy surges from nearby systems. Sparks flew from damaged panels and the heat of the machinery pressed against them. "This way," Rin called, pointing to a small emergency exit he had detected on the map. The group climbed through the narrow shaft, the walls vibrating as the warship shifted around them. They could hear the hum of automated weapons above and below, systems analyzing their biology, comparing their movements, and predicting their actions. Mara's heart pounded in her chest. "We cannot stop. Keep moving." After what felt like hours, they reached a secondary airlock. The chamber was small, barely enough for the group to fit. Rin quickly worked the control panel, trying to override the lock. The drones pressed close, their glowing eyes reflecting off the metal walls. "Almost done," Rin muttered, sweat dripping down his face. The airlock doors hissed open just as the drones surged forward. The Ketheri stumbled into the docking bay, their small research vessel waiting silently. The Vayari had monitored their progress and was ready for immediate takeoff. Mara barked orders. "Board quickly. Do not stop. The team scrambled into their ship. Rin locked the docking clamps and initiated the launch sequence. The Veyari shook violently as it separated from the warship. Outside, the massive turrets on the human vessel swiveled, tracking the fleeing intruders. Beams of energy swept the empty corridors where the Ketheri had just been. The warship's voice filled the vacuum of space, carried through sensors into the Veyari. It was not threatening in tone, but it was clear. The message was simple. They had survived this encounter, but the ship had not forgotten them. Mara took a deep breath, her hands steadying on the controls. We survived, but we have learned something more important than knowledge alone. This ship does not forgive, it does not forget, and it is not just metal. It is alive. Jor sank into a seat, pale but relieved, alive and judging us. I never imagined a ship could feel like this, Rin nodded. We underestimated humans. We thought we were studying a relic. Instead, we were tested, and barely passed. The stars stretched before them as the Veyari accelerated away from the warship. From a distance, the massive vessel looked calm again, silent and still, but the scholars knew better. The human warship had awakened, and it had seen them. It remembered. Mara looked back at the slowly shrinking silhouette of the warship. We came seeking knowledge. We found something more. Humans are not what we thought. They build machines that carry their will, their courage, and their judgment, and that is something no one can ignore. The Veyari moved faster, leaving the warship behind, but every scholar carried the memory of the encounter in their minds. The mission had been dangerous, more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. They had come to study a machine, but instead they had witnessed the living spirit of an entire species. And they understood finally that humans did not simply fight to survive. Humans built for endurance, for courage, for judgment that lived on long after the crew was gone. The Ketheri would tell their council what had happened. They would warn other explorers. But Mara knew in her heart that nothing could truly prepare any species for the living legacy of a human warship. The ship had judged them, tested them, and let them live. The lesson was clear. Do not underestimate humanity. The Veyari sped through the quiet expanse of space, leaving the massive human warship behind. The Ketheri scholars sat in silence, their hearts still racing from the encounter. The distant stars looked calm, but the memory of the awakened vessel weighed heavily on their minds. Mara sat in her chair, her hands folded on the console. She replayed every moment of the boarding in her head. The glowing turrets, the moving drones, the voice of the ship speaking in a language older than many galaxies. We underestimated them, she said quietly. We thought humans were reckless and weak, but this ship has shown us how wrong we were. Jor leaned back, still pale and shaking. It judged us. It tested us. And it let us leave. I cannot imagine what would have happened if we had failed. Rin nodded slowly. It is not only a machine. It carries the will of its crew, their courage, their decisions. Humans do not just build warships. They build legacies. Mara's eyes remained fixed on the fading silhouette of the warship in the distance. We thought we were here to study history, but the history was alive. It is still alive, and it is still watching the stars. The Ketheri Council would hear their report soon. Scholars across the Empire would read it and wonder at the discoveries. But Mara knew that no words could fully capture what they had seen. A human warship was not just metal circuits and weapons. It was a living archive of human courage and determination, a sentinel that continued to guard the memory of its people long after they were gone. The team reviewed their data carefully. Every recording, every image, every system reading from the warship was cataloged. But even as they did, Mara felt that the most important lesson was not something that could be recorded in files. It was a lesson about humanity itself. They fight not because it is easy, she said, not because they want glory. They fight because they cannot accept surrender. Their ships are extensions of that spirit. They do not simply survive. They endure, they resist, and they remember. Rin shivered, remembering the moments when the turrets had tracked them, and the drones had herded them through the corridors. It was testing us at every step. Every move we made, it predicted, measured, and judged. We were never in control. The ship was. Jor looked out the window, his mind still on the corridors of the massive vessel. We thought we were the explorers, but we were the observed. Every step we took was recorded. Every hesitation noticed. The humans built more than weapons. They built judgment. They built machines that carried their courage into eternity. Mara nodded. And now we understand. The galaxy cannot underestimate humans. They may appear reckless, fragile, or small in number, but their determination is unmatched. Any enemy that faces them will find more than ships and weapons. They will face a legacy of courage built to last beyond death. For hours the Veari moved through space and the Kethari slowly regained their composure. The initial terror faded, but it was replaced by awe. They had survived an encounter with a human warship. They had lived to tell the story. And yet they knew that the warship would continue to patrol the stars, waiting, watching, ready to challenge anyone who dared disturb it. Mara finally spoke, her voice firm. "We came to study a machine. We found a lesson. The humans do not leave empty vessels behind. Their ships carry their will, their memory, and their courage. And the galaxy must remember that. No other species can underestimate them and survive." Jor swallowed hard, finally calming his shaking hands. "We have to warn others. If any Kethari thinks of boarding a human vessel without preparation, they will not understand the consequences." Rin added, "It is not only strength we observed, it is endurance, strategy, and spirit. The humans fight with more than metal. They fight with everything they are." Mara looked at her team. "Let this be our report. Let it be our warning. We have seen what humans build. We have felt what they leave behind. And we have learned the most important truth." The crew of the Veari nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of her words. They had survived by skill, by luck, and by the careful decisions of their leader. But they had also survived because the warship had allowed it. They knew that a second encounter might not be so forgiving. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Mara made one last observation. "The humans leave nothing empty. Even in silence, even in stillness, their ships carry life, memory, and judgment. That is the true power of humanity. That is what the galaxy must never forget." The Kethari would return to their home systems with stories, with warnings, and with data. But the lesson they carried in their hearts would remain clear and simple. Humans are more than they appear. Their courage, their will, and their legacy are alive in their machines. The galaxy may try to challenge them, but a human warship will always fight back. Not just with weapons, but with the spirit of a people who never surrender. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the human warship continued its vigil, awake and watching, waiting for the next test, ready to prove once again that the courage of humans was a force no one could ignore. The Kethari learned this lesson in the deepest corridors of the ship. They survived, but the memory of the warship, alive and aware, would remain with them forever. The warning spread across the Kethari Empire quickly. Do not underestimate humans. Respect their legacy. Survive them if you can. The galaxy would remember the encounter.